Nothing changes in Melbourne. Another weekend, another machete attack, and right on cue, another press conference where Premier Jacinta Allan insists everything is just fine.
Yes, after a man was hacked at Broadmeadows last night by a gang of men with machetes, the Premier fronted cameras to declare that her machete ban was working.
We know that the ban on machetes and the handing in of machetes is working, because just through the machete bins alone, we've had more than 5,000 of these dangerous weapons handed in.
Working? Tell that to the guy in hospital. If only the gang had remembered to drop off their machetes at one of Jacinta Allan's bins on their way to the stabbing. Have a listen to the way Jacinta Allan pretends the real villains are the weapons themselves rather than the lawless thugs wielding them.
All up more than 20,000 of these dangerous weapons that are deadly, that are causing so much grief and concern in our community, it's being taken off our streets.
No, Premier, the machetes aren't causing grief. The people swinging them are. I mean, try banning criminals, though, I suppose, James, that would actually require locking some of them up instead of waving them back into the community, as is so often the case. And then it got truly bizarre. The Premier suggested machete attacks are new.
It is new offending that is causing, I acknowledge, huge concern in local communities. It is also causing great harm.
And of course they are new if you've spent the last few years hiding under the desk at Spring Street. Meanwhile, the City of Melbourne's annual report says 3 out of 5 residents don't feel safe in the CBD after dark. But, Danica, they're just voters. What would they know?
The CBD of Melbourne is safe, and I wish to reiterate that the Melbourne CBD is safe.
If machete attacks keep happening, how can you say the machete ban is working? I think I've figured out her strategy. The Premier of Victoria is into, the New Agers call it manifesting. And the idea is if you say something often enough, you can actually speak it into being. And I think that's her plan for reducing machete crime.
No, I disagree. I actually disagree with that.
Go on.
Manifesting is very, very different to that, James. Manifesting actually works. What Jacinta Allan is doing is clearly not working, because...
Maybe she says it a bit more.
She just says it. I feel like with Jacinta Allan, it's one of those things... I feel like it's more the definition of insanity. You know, when you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's not working? That's insanity.
Well, that's Victorian voters.
That's Victorian voters. But what is this new lingo that she's using now? Now she's saying it is new offending that's causing harm. Well, what exactly is it? It's like this new strategy making it seem like she's actually shocked at the very prospect that machetes are being used in the state. Like it's the very first time she's ever heard of a machete attack.
And of course, she pulled a similar stunt after that violent protest the other weekend, where she said this was a very different kind of protest, which of course it's not different from previous protests. So she's trying to act like this is a new problem that she's having to get on top of, rather than something that's been existing for a long time. And of course, there were 3 machete attacks in just 4 days over the weekend. Saturday night, Friday and Wednesday. So 3 in 4 days. For her to front the Victorian public and say the machete ban is working, what she really means is law-abiding Victorians are handing in their machetes, but that doesn't mean the ban is working, because machete attacks are still happening. In actual fact, you could say the frequency over the last week at least has increased.
The other thing that bothered me on Thursday, she said, quote, "It is violent offending, it's brazen, occurring in spaces in ways we've not seen before, and it's increasingly being done by children." Well, offending by children in Victoria, James, is on the up since records began back in the 90s. And her government would know that. They would have all of the statistics, but what they're doing is refusing to acknowledge it. And that is the key issue here, is that Jacinta Allan still has actually not acknowledged that there is a crime crisis going on in her state. So it's easy for her to trot out this new age lingo, as you called it. But I just think that this is... it's a blight on Victorians, because this is meant to be the state with the toughest bail laws in the country. And this is what we're hearing time and time again. Now, that's one aspect, and obviously they're rendered useless if the justice system doesn't actually oblige with these laws. And we've seen a similar, the incident that happened at Luna Park, for example, over the last week. But the other problem is that the Premier has come out and said that she wants to toughen these bail laws, but members of her cabinet do not want to toughen the bail laws. So they are all driven and entrenched by a woke, progressive ideology.
The other thing is, how many times can you say we have the toughest bail laws in the country and we're going to make them tougher? Like,
Yeah.
How tough can they be? The jig is up, though, right? Because the Melbourne City Council's Wellness and Health Survey, as we said, has found that 3 out of 5 Victorians don't feel safe in the CBD after dark. And interestingly, only 77%, and 77% is high, right? But only 77% said they feel safe in the Melbourne CBD during the day. For almost a quarter of Victorians to say we don't feel safe during the day in the city is quite astonishing.
Well, I think what we can summarise it as, it is the definition of insanity. It's saying the same thing and doing the same thing over and over again without actual results.
So the question is, the Premier is insane. Are the Victorian voters insane? We'll find out.
We'll find out next year. Exactly.